You're listening to This Magical Life, a podcast dedicated to exploring the depths of spirituality and personal growth.
Gwilym, it's lovely for you to be here, and great for us to be talking. And as we were chatting before we hit the record button, you said that what you really wanted to talk about was, and I said, let me hit the button, and which is what I'm doing now. What do you really want to talk about?
What do I really want to talk about? I suppose what I'm really interested in and what fires me is, there's a few terms for it, but one is symbolic or cultural coherence. And this is coming from a quasi-anthropological perspective, but also from a study of historical literature perspective and a cultural perspective also. And, maybe just to position this a bit clearer, we were initially talking about, the ethics of working in different cultures, regardless of where we come from, what it means to have integrity and to be ethically responsible in the types of materials that we use from the various cultures we're engaged in across the world. And my feeling was I keep getting drawn into those conversations, which I'm happy to partake in and to contribute to. But what I feel most qualified to talk about is this other thing, which is coherence, I suppose, symbolic, cultural coherence, which, you might translate into something like spiritual coherence, depending on, the frame you're working.
That sounds really interesting, but can you unpack it? Because I'm not quite sure what you mean by when you talk about coherence and spiritual coherence.
So, in my understanding, what we need as healthy human beings is a cultural coherence, which includes, for people who then go on to use the further term spiritual coherence, I would also call it a kind of symbolic coherence, maybe a narrative that we live within, or a series of narratives that we live within that give us coherence. We can create meaning in a coherent fashion. And that coherence is built up through language, it's built up through community, through norms, through values, all of the stuff that sociologists and anthropologists study. If that phenomena is coherent, then we are coherent. If it breaks down, then we lose coherence. So I suppose that the basic premise is that we consider ourselves, and we are and we operate as individuals, but as meaningful, communicating identities, we also belong to this greater network, which we share with loads of other people. And if that network is coherent, then we are coherent individuals. If that network breaks down and it loses its integrity, then our identities shift. The way our meaning is created shifts. The way that we make sense of the world starts to break down and becomes contradictory and shifts. So for me, in very simple terms, coherence, cultural coherence, which involves language, myth, if you want, ceremony, ritual, arts, all of that, we form it, we seek for coherence in that field. Does that make sense?
That's really clear, and that's really helpful. And as you were talking about it, the sort of image I had was the complete opposite, the lack of coherence that we see in the world today. From everything from social media to what's happening politically and all the rest of it, where there's a sense of sort of chaos, of disjointedness, in talking about integrity, of course, the complete lack of integrity we see in so many places now. So that need for what you're talking about seems to me really central and paramount in the world today. And then that, of course, begs the question, okay, how do we do this? How do we foster coherence in ourselves and then around us?
Okay, just pushing me in at the deep end there, Philip. So I think we've evolved instinctively to seek coherence. So we are always doing it. I think we're at least seeking coherence in some form or fashion. We're looking for stable meaning, durable meaning that helps us make sense of. I mean, I think the world has always been crazy. I don't think it ever stopped being crazy. You know, how could it not be crazy given the immense diversity of nature on the planet? Crazy as an experience, or at least mind-boggling sometimes. So we are always seeking that coherence, but I think what might be happening and I can only speak for my sort of, global north, sort of limited, what used to be called first world Western culture here in my neck of the woods. As far as I can tell, what's happening is there is an information overload. There is a destabilization of what used to be our usual networks of meaning, communal culture. Social structures are shifting and breaking down, moving. Not always bad, but not always good. And so I don't find it that surprising that we as a human animal, we keep returning to the things we've always done, which is to seek symbolic coherence in different ways. And that can express itself through spiritual quests, through spirituality. It can express itself through seeking deeper engagement with different forms of culture, I suppose is one way I would put it. I have this slightly idiosyncratic understanding of spirituality in that it is nested in culture. I think culture is spiritual, fundamentally. I don't see much of a distinction between the two meanings. So for me, a seeking for a deep and coherent cultural engagement is what we naturally turn to in face of an increasingly disjointed network of meaning in the world.
Yes, exactly. And of course, it also explains why people sit in bubbles, why there's that shift towards dogmatism among certain people, fundamentalism, in that this need for coherence can sometimes be, well, if we wanted to stand in judgment, be regressive, but or certainly limiting. So I suppose, the question is then, how can we make this need for coherence not one that forces a retreat, but actually is sort of generous and expansive and kind of keeps up with the spirit of the times and the needs of the times and of people, and yet has integrity and so on. And yeah, and that idea of spirituality nesting within culture is I think it was Jonathan Woolley did a Mount Hemus paper for the Order on Druidry as culture. His sort of central idea was, instead of seeing it as a spirituality, why not see it as a culture? And that gives us a different perspective and take on it and so on.
Well, maybe just to come back to this need for integrity, part of the instinctive drive is also what we're really seeking for is an integrity. I mean, maybe to come back to the earlier conversation we were having before we started recording, there is therefore an ethical position, but I suppose the responsibilities are different depending on who you are and what your cultural exposure level is. Because one of the things that I have an admiration of in paganism, I suppose, but generally in sort of modern spirituality, is that it's kind of anarchic, and it's usually very self-determined, and it's usually a choice that someone makes that goes against the grain of the culture they've inherited. And so it's like it shows a lot of personal agency. And so, we were talking about cultural appropriation before, all that kind of stuff. And for me, people, for example, if you work 12 hours a day and your life is hard and you're struggling and you're stressed and just keeping everything together is a job, then I don't have a problem with anything that you do. Like, I don't. You could call yourself, I don't know, the Celtic Arianrhod and wear fairy wings in the woods all day for as long as you want. I'll put your fairy wings on for you. That's not where the issue is in terms of integrity and coherence. That's sort of further up the food chain, So people's direct experience of their own instinctive drives to find this coherence, I think, should always be supported. It should always be addressed openly and honestly and charitably and compassionately, because that's what people need. So it's kind of, and this is where this idea of coherence and integrity does need to be talked about from a bird's eye view, analytical, objective, slightly scholarly academic perspective very often. Like it just does. Those of us who try to maintain the health and integrity of our traditional materials do need to engage in that. But I think that we need to be very careful about how that debate and discussion is carried out and where it's directed, because people engaged with a personal quest and search for coherence, it's not their responsibility, like they're doing the best they can with what they have.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to come at it in a bit more of a nuanced way than just making these grand blanket ethical statements about things.
Yeah, it's nuanced, it's subtle, and we need to be kind of generous in our support of the human quest for meaning and purpose and yeah. So if you had a week free, suddenly the gods gave you a week where you had
I want it.
what would it to really feed your soul and inspire you? What would you do?
Oh, that's not hard. That's just being outside.
Right, go for it. Yeah, where would you go?
I'd be on the beach.
Yeah.
Just down the road here, and I'd be up in the woods and up on the mountain.
Great. Tell the viewers where you are.
So I'm in what's generally known as, I'm in Mid Wales in a place called Dyfi Valley. The central town is Machynlleth. The Dyfi Valley is a long estuary. Aberdyfi is the seaside town at the end of the estuary where there's a beautiful long beach. I'm kind of in the foothills of Cadair Idris. And so, I mean, when I say, what would I do to nourish my soul, I would just let myself settle into walking about with the dog. Works for me.
Yeah. No, that's it. You'd be by the sea. You go to the sea. You'd go up the hills.
I mean, if you really want to know, so what happens is because like not that I'm ancient, but I'm 50 this year. So walking uphill means I get more out of breath. So I can't. I usually find myself talking to myself.
Yeah,
I can't talk to myself so much when I'm walking uphill because I run out of breath. So a lot of my talking to myself, which usually ends up, dictated into a mobile phone, is on the beach these days.
Yes.
So I find that when I'm walking, when I'm out and about, when the landscape is changing in front of me, when I'm, as I move through different places, what's going through my mind changes. I usually find that on the beach, I end up in these quite intense conversations with myself. I sound bonkers though. And I end up in these quite intense conversations with myself. I must record that and
Yes.
that thought down. But if I'm up in the mountains, it's very different because there isn't an opportunity for that. And then, after a bit of hill walking, my mind is much quieter. I'm not in so much of conversation with myself. I haven't been recording deep thinky thoughts in my phone. I'm just I suppose I'm just reverting to what my body is, more than just all this.
It sounds quite a good combination of, both going up into the hills and letting the mental processing sort of drop away to just be, just to be, and then going down to the sea and allowing that kind of sea air to make the mind clearer and to talk. And presumably you've discovered the button. I'm very old fashioned, so I've only just discovered the button copy transcript. Have you done that? So you talk into a voice note and there are these 3 dots and one of them is copy transcript, and you tap it and then you send it to yourself as an email or something and you've got the whole thing written out. Have you found that?
I mean, that's essentially how my work evolves. And as a self-employed, whatever I am, I'm still not sure what I am, but the things I do, then, for years, that is how the work evolves, and how, it can be dangerous. I just want to be clear. If I've got anything worth handing over to anybody or giving some clear insight into how this process works, the rate at which new ideas turn can be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Particularly when you can have them, just appear like some magical agenda. That's a brilliant idea, and then all of a sudden I'm overcommitted to do too many things. So my problem is not having ideas or figuring out what I think I could or should do. It's sort of choosing the right one. So it's just
discrimination. Which
too many options.
Which is a sort of example, really, of, I guess, what our culture presents us with now. There's so much stimulus and so many aids to allowing us to do that, just like, even on the phone, the voice notes and so on. And then what can be sacrificed is discrimination, so that's the discipline, I guess, isn't it, of this kind of work that I guess you and I do, which is around the world of ideas and articulation of ideas and so on.
Yeah, I also think it's being able to identify the right ache of potential.
The right what? Say that word again.
The right ache of potential.
Ache of potential.
Right. So that you have an idea, and then you let it settle, and it's like, there's potential in that idea, and the longer you defer realizing that potential, it becomes an ache. There's this ache of potential,
right?
And so I'm like, I try and follow which ache of potential aches, which is worse. Like, I really want to do one. I really want to do that. Yeah. And then how that matches up with, how well am I doing earning a living to keep myself and my family with a roof over our heads?
Yes.
The inevitable equation, yeah?
Yeah.
Ache of potential, income. That's the world I'm in.
Well, thank you for that. That's a new idea. I hadn't come across that. Egg. First, I thought you said egg of potential, and I was thinking of this little egg.
It could be an egg. I mean, I've never thought of myself as sort of, getting broody over my potential, but maybe.
Yeah, maybe you didn't need to sit on it for a while. Sit on. Yeah. So, but that's very nice, because it's seeing like there's a lot of material in there. I think a lot of inspiration for me in that concept of the ache of potential. That in all the ideas that are flowing through one and that one's experiencing, some of them are sort of emitting a signal of requiring attention. That if you don't attend to, they become an ache. They become like a symptom, a bit like a ache in the body that is the body's trying to tell you something. Hey, I need some exercise, or I need to stretch, or whatever it is. I know that I can go away from this conversation, and that's gonna cook for me and be a helpful concept.
Just don't let it turn into a pain of potential.
Yes. And yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
If you found that useful.
Be sure to subscribe, share, and join me next time for more inspiration.